And welcome back to the Rogues of the Garage channel. This is episode 12 of Mailcall, where I open envelopes that I received today containing cards associated with the Outlaws of Thunderjunction set of Magic the Gathering, as well as its expansions, Breaking News, and The Big Score. Let's get to the envelopes. Alrighty. Looks like we have the, I believe it's called the textured foil showcase of the Lotus Ring, an artifact, 3 colorless, indestructible. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has vigilance, and has the tap to sacrifice this creature to add 3 mana of any one color. It does have an equip cost of 3. I think it's not a bad little card to have. 3/3 is always nice to add to any creature plus vigilance, so you don't have to tap it to block. Attack rather, excuse me. You don't have to tap it to attack. And then if you make sure to tap this to a weaker creature, or maybe possibly even a token creature, it might be worth it at some point to sacrifice it to gain those 3 mana. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, another cut in. It feels like this is the third one for this video. But in the packaging of the textured foil for the Lotus Ring was actually also the textured foil version of Tarnation Vista. A land enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a color. You can tap it for 1 mana of the chosen color, or you can pay 1 colorless and tap it for each color among monocolored permanents you control. Add 1 mana of that color. Potentially powerful ability to have if you're running either a dual or triple colored deck. And here we have what I believe to be the extended art showcase version of Pest Control. 1 black, 1 white. Destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less. I've had this card multiple times as it appears in multiple variations throughout the Big Score set. As I've said in previous videos, I think this is a great card to have in your deck when you're facing opponents that like to use a lot of tokens. Right? Tokens oftentimes have no mana value, so it's an easy way to wipe out all tokens as well as just small creatures. And I may have forgot this one in previous videos, since it's all permanents with mana value 1 or less, you could probably get a lot of mana rocks out of the way. I'm going to do this little cut in. When the showcase version of Pest Control came in, I did not notice that it was taped to another card. Going through after the initial filming and putting cards in the sleeves, I recognize it. So here we have Molten Duplication, 1 red, 1 colorless, in Big Score showcase version. It's a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste until the end of turn. Sacrifice at the beginning of your next end step. You know, this is going to be nice to get off a key spell, a key amount of damage. Anything that you think is very important in the moment, this spell is going to help you achieve that. Looks like there are multiple cards in this. So let's start. Oh, and it feels like there are multiple cards in this sleeve. So let's start with the loot, the key to everything. This is simply the showcase version. I don't believe this is the textured foil version. 1 red, 1 blue, 1 green, 1, 2, ward of 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of card types among other non-land permanents you control. You may play those cards this turn. As I said, and I believe it was the last video actually, that this is a way to mill through your deck, and particularly if you are maybe later in the game, so the 1/2 isn't as potent as it would be early game, but maybe you still need some cards you have to get to your engine, get your engine up and running. And this would just be a nice way of helping that out. Next, again, we have the extended art showcase version of the Lotus Ring. We had the textured foil version just moments ago. So again, artifact, 3 colorless, indestructible. You can get your characters, your creatures, +3/+3, and the ability to sacrifice them for mana. And here we have the showcase non-foiled, non-textured foil version of the Sword of Wealth and Power. 3 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets a +2/+2 and has protection from instants and from sorceries. That, to me, is insanely powerful. Whenever equipped creature deals damage, combat damage, to a player, create a treasure token. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, there is a reason why this card is one of the more expensive cards associated with the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, particularly if you're, getting the textured foil version. It becomes very expensive. I believe this is the showcase version of Tarnation Vista. It's a land. Put it down here. Tarnation Vista enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a color. Add 1 mana of the chosen color. You may pay 1 and tap for each color among mono-colored permanents you control. Add 1 mana of that color. So let's see what else is in this sleeve. We have Transmutation Font. Artifact, 5 mana. Tap it to create your choice of a blood token, clue token, or food token. Pay 3 and tap to sacrifice 3 artifact tokens with different names. Search your library for an artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. I think this is a must-have in artifact decks. I think you even consider this in an artifact-heavy non-artifact deck. It just feels like that second ability is too good to pass up. All right, Oltec Matter Weaver. I believe in the showcase version. 2/4 Human Artificer. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose one. Either create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token, or create a token that's a copy of a target artifact token you control. Again, I think it's a very nice ability for being only a 3 mana cost creature. You get out yourself some chump blockers, or create yourself some extra tokens. Treasure tokens, blood tokens, food tokens. I believe those all count as artifacts. My memory serves. Definitely treasure tokens do. Depending on the lay of the land, depending on the way the game is playing out, that could also be a very, very handy ability. And next we have the showcase version of Memory Vessel. 2 red, 3 colorless. At any time you tap it to exile the Memory Vessel, each player exiles the top 7 cards of their library. Until your next turn, players may play cards they exiled this way, and they can't play cards from their hand. Activate only as a sorcery. I believe I mentioned this in a previous video. To me, the way I look at this is a card when you play once you've milled your hand. Let's say you're down to 1 or 2 cards in your hand, and this is a quick way to kind of get access to cards. And then you possibly are able to punish an opponent, depending on the size of the hand they had. If you happen to know what cards were in their hand at the time of playing this artifact or tapping this artifact, be a great way of delaying your opponents. It looks like we have Almond Path Journey. Again, I believe this happens to be the showcase version, not the textured foil showcase version. We'll open up the plastic here and check to see if I am correct in that regard. I do not think it is textured, so I'm thinking that this is simply part of the showcase cards of the big score. 1 green, 3 colorless. Enchantment. When Almond Path Journey enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 5 land cards that have different names, exile them, then shuffle. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card at random exiled from Almond Path Journey and put it on the battlefield tapped. This, to me, is an amazing card when it comes to ramp and guaranteeing yourself mana. You sometimes get mana screwed. Well, this is a way to ensure mana. Now, granted, it'll always be around later, right? Because it has to come in at the beginning of your end step and it's tapped, but you know that you're going to at least have some flow of mana, some increase in your mana supply when you play this enchantment. Next, we have the showcase version of Generous Plunder, 1 red, 1 colorless. Menace. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a treasure token. When you do, target opponent creates a tapped treasure token. When Generous Plunder attacks, it deals damage to defending player equal to the number of artifacts they control. You are essentially trying to increase, in theory, increase the damage this character does by giving your opponents a token, a treasure token. Right. Here we have the showcase version of the Grand Abolisher. Again, I think in the first video I made, or one of the early videos I made, I call him the Grand Abolisher. But 2 white for 2/2. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activated abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. As I've said, I think now multiple times, I really feel that this card is a win con. Yeah, it's a 2/2 for 2 mana, so that fills early game. And I think it certainly could be useful early game, but that ability to kind of lock down your opponent's options during your turn just feels like a win con to me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and here we are. Here is the breaking news version of Anguish Unmaking. 1 white, 1 black, 1 colorless for an instant spell. Exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. A very powerful removal card, because you're not just putting it into the target into the opponent's graveyard where they may have a much easier time recurring it, bringing it back into the game. With this, it's gone, right? You exile it. It's gone from the game, and there are very few. I don't know actually if there's anything that allows you to play a card that an opponent exiled. Sometimes you have cards yourself that tell you to exile and then play. I don't know about any cards that would allow you to bring back from exile a card sent to exile by an opponent. A low mana cost, 3 life in a commander game is not that bad. Very powerful card. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So first up, we have Ancient Cornucopia. This is the showcase version. 1 green, 2 colorless artifact. Whenever you cast a spell that's 1 or more colors, you gain 1 life of that spell's colors. Oh, that adds up. Can add up real fast. Do this only once each turn. Add 1 mana of any color if you tap it. That is a very, very nice card. Very powerful, potentially, card, particularly if you're playing something like a tricolor deck or even there are some decks out there in Commander where it's all 5 colors. So I think that would be a great card to have in those type of decks. Esoteric Duplicator. Whenever you sacrifice Esoteric Duplicator or another artifact, you may pay 2. If you do, at the beginning of the next end step, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. Pay 2, sacrifice Esoteric Duplicator, draw a card. You're able to make copies. Those copies, depending on what you copy, can help you ramp, whether it's in power or mana or what have you. And so, very powerful card. Greed's Gambit. Enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, gain 6 life, and create 3 2/1 black bat creature tokens with flying. At the beginning of your end step, you discard a card, lose 2 life, and sacrifice a creature. When Greed's Gambit leaves the battlefield, you discard 3 cards, lose 6 life, and sacrifice 3 creatures. To me, this feels like a wrap-up card. This is, you believe you're close to the finish line. You just got to find extra few things to get you over. And so you play Greed's Gambit. You gain the life, you get your cards. And I think that's probably where the bang for the buck is in Greed's Gambit. It's the cards, thinking that the next 3 cards are going to change the outcome. The bat creatures, the tokens, they're nice. And again, maybe you just need that extra little bit of damage that comes from the bats. But I think this is I believe I'm close enough to win the game. Let me take this gambit. Let me take this risk. And you play, Greed's Gambit. Hostile Investigator. 1 black, 3 colorless. When Hostile Investigator enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Whenever 1 or more players discard one or more cards, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. This is total 4 mana for a 4/3. I look at this and think it's not bad for the mana cost. You know, the investigation skill's pretty nice to be able to trigger. You know, if you're running a black deck and you build around in, you know, investigations, I suspect off the top of my head, the investigation is probably going to give you a clue. Now, is the clue the one that allows you to draw a card? I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you're going to play in an investigation-heavy deck or clue-heavy deck, again, believe investigation gives you clues. This could be a card you look to throw in there. You know, it's a little bit high on the mana curve, but gaining extra clues, if that's what your deck is built around, it could be very beneficial. The Lost Giant, 1 colorless. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage, put a charge counter on Lost Giant. Remove a charge counter from Lost Giant and choose 1. Untap target land. Target creature can't block this turn. Or put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. And it has an equipped cost of 1. So for very low mana input, you're getting some nice abilities. As long as, and this is the key, as long as you can deal damage. But the abilities are pretty nice. You know, the mana could come back handy. Forbidding of a creature to block could also be handy. And then always buffing your creatures is nice as well. Sandstorm Salvager, 1 green, 2 colorless, a showcase frame of the big score. It's a 1/1 human artificer, and it's expensive for a 1/1, so let's see the abilities here. When Sandstorm Salvager enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact, creature token. Okay, so you're really getting for 3 mana, you're really getting 2 creatures, a 1/1 and a 3/3. So all of a sudden, this card's gotten a lot better. For a cost of 2 and a tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature token you control. They gain trample until end of turn. All right, this card has gone from me questioning, you know, its mana cost relative to its power toughness to thinking, man, this card is damn good. Territory Forge, 1 red, 4 colorless for an artifact. When Territory Forge enters the battlefield, if you cast it, exile target artifact or land. So that allows you to weaken an opponent, assuming you target an opponent. Territory Forge has all activated abilities of the exiled card. So that is pretty nasty, right? It's, again, you're going to be able to simultaneously weaken an opponent while strengthening yourself. And the last card in this sleeve was the Torpor Orb. 2 colorless artifact. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So that is potentially very devastating to Spellslinger decks, Twiddlestorm decks, I think. I think Twiddlestorm decks would be affected by this. I would have to double check. But depending on who your opponent, I think this is definitely kind of like a sideboard card, depending on who you're playing and the decks they're playing, that you might want to add in for that match. We have Legion Extruder, again in the showcase framing of the big score. 1 red, 1 colorless. When Legion Extruder enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. Pay 2 colorless and tap to sacrifice another artifact. Create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Maybe you've got a setup where you have a bunch of really cheap blockers that happen to be artifacts. Well, now you can just get rid of those and upgrade them, right? Get a 3/3 golem instead of a 1/1 or a 0/1. Or heck, even a 2/2, right? 3/3 is an upgrade over a 2/2. Depending on how you build your deck, this would be a nice card to add. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm back with a cut-in. During filming, Fomori Vault was actually in the same packaging as the Ancient Cornucopia. I missed it during the initial filming, so while I was placing my cards into sleeves for storage, I found it, and so I just want to introduce you to it. This is the Big Score Showcase version of Fomori Vault, a land that you can tap for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 3 colorless to tap and discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of these cards into your hand and the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. It's going to allow you to get through your deck a little bit faster. It can be possibly very powerful in an artifact-heavy deck. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like we have a Human Warrior token, 3/1, Trample Haste. Again, I've been collecting the tokens as well as the standard cards. Last envelope for today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, looks like I end up saving, well, the most expensive today for last. What we have here is the showcase version of the Simulacrum synthesizer. I gotta be able to speak here. Simulacrum synthesizer. 1 blue, 2 colorless. For the artifact, when Simulacrum synthesizer enters the battlefield, scry 2. Whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/0 colors construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Again, this card is going to be good in all kinds of decks, particularly artifact oriented decks. And I suspect why this version is more expensive than the other versions out there is the artwork, because it is pretty sweet artwork. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings this episode of Mail Call to a conclusion. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next time.